Hey folks, back again with another vlog. This is Star vs. the Forces of Evil, episode 5. Diaz family vacation and Brittany's birthday. If you're wondering what happened to episode 4, I covered it a long time ago. I will link it in the episode description. This was a good pair of episodes. These two episodes worked well together. What I mean by that is the first episode, Diaz Family Vacation, is very clearly about kind of an intergenerational kind of thing. It's about Star learning that, well, let me take it back. Star already finds Diaz's parents to be cool. A concept which is incomprehensible to Diaz. And we see in the episode's opening that Star finds her own parents extremely boring. They're rambling on about things she doesn't really care about, trivialities like throne posture, and she's bored out of her mind. And her parents are depicted as basically either boring or disciplinarian, and there's not really any other options. Whereas, from Star's perspective, Diaz's parents are really fun. Which they are. Then we transition into a really classic cartoon structure where you've got the innocents who are constantly on the verge of peril, and the characters desperately trying to help them, trying to protect them, that get comedically injured or have to figure out how to protect the other people who are always completely oblivious to what's going on around them. It's Mindy and Buttons from the Animaniacs. That was the main one from when I was a kid. I remember at least a couple of Looney Tunes cartoons involving a puppy or a kitten and an adult dog or cat having to protect it. It's been decades since I've seen it, but I'm pretty sure that was the primary joke behind Mr. Magoo. Or maybe that it was just blind luck in his case. But yeah, it's a standard cartoon staple, but it's well executed here. We get a lot of really creative dangers. And we get Diaz getting to be really creative in circumventing them himself. I particularly like the bubblegum and the carnivorous plant. That was very cute. But it's interesting here that the Diaz parents are the innocents. They're the people who don't understand the danger. Which usually it would be the other way around, like Mindy and Buttons, for example, or with the puppies and kittens that I was talking about. It's an infant, in some sense, who is the one blithely wandering on, and the adult that has to protect them. Here it's the other way around. It's the children that have to protect the parents. And there's a simple reason for that. It's because Star comes from a fairy tale realm. The dangers are childish dangers. They're the things of the nursery. Monsters in the woods. Dragons and things in the woods that will eat you. Don't stray off the path. Fairy tale kind of stuff. These are very primal fears, and they're fears that nowadays we mostly relegate to children's stories. The occasional horror movie will explore them, but mostly we confine them to fairy tales and the like. And that's significant because the Diazes don't belong in that world, and so they're innocent of its dangers. Whereas Star, of course, is a native of that world, as are her parents, so they're able to handle the dangers there no problem. But Marco is not. What makes this interesting is that in the end, the Diazes were never in any danger at all. The Hydra and it breathed fire, so it was sort of a hydra, sort of a multi-headed dragon. Not really entirely clear what it was. It ignored them. They got to take a nice hot bath, and weren't in any danger at all. Because, of course they weren't. Because the fears of the fairy tale are imaginary. They're far away. Once upon a time, we, told stories about big bad wolves lurking in the woods because, hey, there actually were big bad wolves lurking in the woods. The woods were not far away. The threat was real. Now, wolves are endangered. The woods are very far away from the kind of suburban area that the Diazes live in. And so the dangers presented in a fairy tale aren't the dangers of real life. They aren't the dangers of the adult world. So, of course, the things that threaten a child are not threatening to an adult, because the adult knows it's all make-believe. Compounding that, by being the innocent, in a fairy tale, the true innocent, the fool who is too foolish to be afraid, is almost always immune to harm. The classic example is the folktale of the boy who didn't know what fear was. He goes on this quest to discover what fear is, and he spends a night in a haunted house, and he, resolves the haunting, and he goes through all these perils and dangers, and wins the hand of the, beautiful princess or whatever, and then at the very end of the story, gets a bucket of cold water splashed over him, and shivers, and then he understands what it feels like to be afraid. But, the point is that there's this figure of the holy fool, of the character whose lack of understanding is evidence of such great innocence, such purity, that the world cannot harm them, cannot touch them, because they're, too pure. I believe the Tumblr parlance these days is cinnamon roll. And that's exactly what's going on here. They're too innocent, too pure, they cannot be touched by the dangers of the world around them. And meanwhile, in amongst all this stuff about adults in a child's world, can it harm them, you've got the king, who is essentially on vacation as well. He's taking a vacation from being king by, running around in the wilderness and killing monsters, which is an opportunity for him and Star to bond. Something that I've always thought is very important for a teenager to have, at least if they have two parents, is secrets with one parent to be kept from the other parent. That's part of becoming independent. And I think, it's a developmental thing. I think that's a way of bonding with a parent and of establishing oneself as an independent entity. Someone who has a private life and who is let in on the adult world to a degree. Obviously, like anything else, it can be unhealthy, but, for example, I just went to a con with my nephew, and we went to a panel that was not... My nephew is 15. We went to a panel that was not 18 plus. They allowed him in, but then in the panel they said, basically that kids might want to leave. And things did get a little risque. It was a comedic thing, and some of the jokes were a little salty. But, we agreed afterwards not to discuss it with my brother. It was nothing harmful. But, I think it's good to have, I think it's good to have that kind of connection between a teenager and adult. Now, of course, my nephew being my nephew, he then immediately, upon seeing his parents, told them all about it. And they were fine with it. This is why I'm an uncle and not a parent. I don't know what I'm talking about. All of that aside, I still think I would have, as a teenager, appreciated an adult that I could share secrets with. I didn't really have that. There was really only my mom, and she had to do all the parenting by herself. And so if there was anything secret, it stayed with me. All of that aside, it was a good episode. A good half episode, good segment, whatever you want to call it. And like I said, tied in really well to the next segment, because that segment was all about, the kids learning a little bit to appreciate the adults, especially Star learning to connect with and appreciate her father a little bit more, by learning that he isn't the figure that she perceived him as. Diaz never quite learned that about his parents, but he at least encountered that Star thinks of them very differently than he does. So that was the second segment, Brittany's birthday, which was very much about the ephemerality of teen concerns, especially popularity. Because when you're a teenager, very little is more important than where you stand on the popularity hierarchy. I know, as a nerd, I'm supposed to say, I never cared about that. Popularity was never a thing. Yeah, but you know what? We were all resentful of the kids at the top. And the question is why? And the answer is because teens in America organize themselves into a hierarchy, and it's as arbitrary as any other hierarchy, but when you're on the bottom, you feel like you shouldn't be. Doesn't matter if down there at the bottom you've got a great circle of friends, you still feel like there's something wrong with being down there. And you either are upset about that and try to climb, or you build up resentment of the whole system. Now, if you're lucky, you let go of all that in your 20s. Relax, move on with your life. If you don't, and you're a dude, then by your mid-20s, you're probably shelling out money to pick up artists and pulling shit like Gamergate. Or at the very least, gatekeeping at conventions. All that kind of bullshit is rooted in dudes who are still trapped in the high school hierarchy and haven't noticed that it ceased to matter the instant they graduated high school. So that's part of why I'm really happy about this episode, because this episode is all about how that hierarchy is bullshit. Fact of the matter is, why is Brittany the most popular girl in school? What does it mean to be the most popular girl in school? Nobody seems to actually like her, except, what's his name, the monster leader. So what does it mean for her to be popular? Well, somehow, through some combination of bullying and exploiting her wealth, she has established herself as the arbiter of the school's hierarchy. And teenagers being teenagers, nobody has noticed that it's bullshit. They all buy into it. Even Star and Diaz. Everybody wants to be at her party, even though once they're at her party, it's miserable. It's terrible, because she's just not a nice person. And I have to say, one thing about my school that helped overcome resentment of that hierarchy is that, at least in my year, most of the really popular kids were actually pretty decent. There wasn't really, some of the older kids when I was a freshman were, bullying and nasty, but by and large, in my year, the popular kids were, pretty cool. We still had nothing to do with them because we were nerds and they were popular kids. But whatever. Point is, I think they're in middle school anyway. And yeah, in middle school, everybody was nasty to everybody. Because middle school is hell. So Brittany is terrible. But in the end, it doesn't matter because everybody loves the party because of Star. And everybody loves Star. And that's why Brittany hates Star, because Star is a threat to her. Because everybody loves Star. And Brittany tries to cut Star out. I'm sure in future episodes she'll probably resort to the other tactics of, what's it called? What's the term for it? Alternative aggressions. Because young people, especially girls, are not allowed to express aggression. They're not allowed to say, you know what, you suck. They're not allowed to say, I hate you. They're not allowed to say, I am angry at you. They have to be nice to everybody all the time, and everybody has to be friends with everybody all the time. They're not allowed to just not be friends with someone. And the result is that their aggression comes out in alternate ways. This is especially true among girls. There's this great book, Odd Girl Out. I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but if I remember to, I'll link it on Amazon or whatever in my in the description of the video. But it's a really good book that talks about these alternative aggressions. And it's things like having a big party with all the cool kids are there and specifically not inviting that one person. Or spreading nasty rumors about them. That's something I bet we'll see Brittany do in later episodes. Bonus points if they're true, like the monsters came because of Star, or Star is an alien, or stuff like that. And, you know, other ways in which kids, again, especially girls, because boys are instead encouraged to use violence, ways in which girls can undercut one another, make each other miserable, bully one another, without it being perceived as overt aggression, because that's what's forbidden in, among children, and to an extent teens. So we're probably going to be seeing that. Otherwise, it was just a lot of fun, that episode. The bus jacking was, kind of unnecessary. I guess it's just, we didn't have the monsters that are trying to steal the wand show up last episode, so we better have them show up in this segment. Like a contractual thing. Obviously, there's not really a contract, maybe with the voice actors, but they could get around that by having them play someone else. But it just feels like the monsters were just stuck in because they haven't had them in a while. I don't feel like they were ever really necessary in that episode. They didn't show up in the previous episode either. We had monsters, but they didn't seem to be affiliated with a guy whose name I keep blanking on, but it's the dude with the beak and the skull helmet. Brittany was doing just fine as villain of the episode. But I guess it wouldn't really have had much in the way of a resolution if the monsters hadn't come along and so we could have a bus crash. But yeah. Fun episodes, fun pair of episodes. Looking forward to the next ones. See you next time. Bye.